Mr. President.
The senator from Oregon, please.
Mr. President, nobody in our country should be above the law. Not a politician, not a celebrity, not a billionaire, no one. The principle of equal justice under the law is so powerful that if you walk outside these doors and you look across to the Supreme Court, you will see them carved into the facade above the pillars. Equal justice under law. No matter how powerful someone is, if they commit a crime, then they need to be prosecuted. And the American people have a right to know if information is being held related to the conduct of crime. So, in regard to the Epstein Files, there's only one right answer: complete and total disclosure of everything, all the details, while protecting the names of the victims. Whatever a person's political party shouldn't matter. Level of power shouldn't matter. Their net worth shouldn't matter. Equal justice under law is the vision of our nation. And if an individual is a pedophile, if an individual has raped a young girl, then they need to be held accountable. Let the chips fall where they may. Jeffrey Epstein was a monster. He groomed and abused, raped, and coordinated the rape by others of underage girls. He trafficked these girls to rich and powerful men. And as I speak here tonight, the Department of Justice has files detailing a tremendous amount of information about his operation. And in those files, we have heard from Pam Bondi, and she informed the president that the president's name is among them. Well, that doesn't mean that he was somebody who participated in a crime. He could be listed as an associate. He could be listed as a friend. He could be listed as somebody who attended a gathering. We don't know. In fact, we don't know about any of the names that are in those files, what they did. But that is the point. Names of powerful people who associated with an individual, Jeffrey Epstein, who was running an international sex trafficking ring. All of that information must be disclosed. Full disclosure is the only option. Every detail should be brought to light, and anyone who committed egregious crimes should be held accountable no matter who they are. My colleague from Oregon, Senator Ron Wyden, and the Senate Finance Committee have been investigating Mr. Epstein's financial network for years. They've been seeking disclosure. I have a letter that Senator Wyden wrote. It reveals that more than 4,700 suspicious wire transfers, adding up to more than $1 billion from just one of Mr. Epstein's bank accounts, and hundreds of millions of dollars in other bank accounts. What would that information show us about who they went to? What questions would it lead us to ask? And what questions would that information answer? The American public has every right to know the questions that Senator Wyden and the Finance Committee are asking. And let me be clear, that work was bipartisan work. Democrats and Republicans together calling for disclosure and accountability. In this letter, Senator Wyden notes, and I quote, Epstein clearly had access to enormous financing to operate his sex trafficking network, and the details on how he got the cash to pay for it are sitting in a Treasury Department filing cabinet. For years, so many people across America in both parties have been demanding the release of the Epstein Files. But we heard a lot from a few folks who are in the administration now. December 15, 2023, Kash Patel said that Mr. Epstein's, quote, black book, quote, was, quote, under the direct control of the FBI. Well, Mr. Patel is now the director of the FBI. On October 22nd, 2024, he wasn't vice president yet, but now he's vice president, J.D. Vance, said in a podcast, quote, seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That's an important thing. On February 25th, 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was in office, said, Mr. Epstein's client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review. But suddenly, we're hearing a different tune from people in the administration. We're hearing, there's nothing to see here, they're saying. Go look somewhere else, they're saying. This is not important, they're saying. But not everyone agrees with that. Let's take the Speaker of the House. July 15th, House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNN, quote, we should put everything out there and let the people decide. On July 16th, Senate Majority Leader John Thune told Fox News, quote, I'm always a believer in transparency. I think more is better. Well, I agree with the Speaker, Mike Johnson. I agree with the Majority Leader, John Thune. I agree that the right principle about this information is to put everything out there. Let us not forget that as the Senate Finance Committee is pursuing those information about the file transfers and what they show, that ultimately it's not about money itself, but about what money tells us and the case it builds for who did what. Because what really matters here is this: the victimization of young girls. That's what this is about. The abuse of young girls. The rape of young girls. That's what this is about. That's what transparency is about. So whether the information in the Department of Justice files are about flight and travel records, names of people who were involved in various ways, names of businesses or nonprofits, other organizations, about meetings held or communications made, whether it was by email, whether it was by text, whether it was by phone call, any immunity deals, any non-prosecution agreements, any plea bargains, any settlements, whatever it is, the American people demand transparency. Just as the Speaker of the House demanded transparency, just as the Majority Leader of the Senate has demanded transparency. This bill requires, and I quote, no record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of any of the following: embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they live. But what the law also says, the bill also says, is the information release must protect the victims and the underage witnesses. Protect those who were victims or who were underage witnesses to crimes. So information can be redacted about those victims and underage witnesses, personally identifiable information, depictions of abuse, or information that would jeopardize a federal investigation or national security. Colleagues, the question before us is simple. Will this body follow the lead of the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the Senate and call for full transparency? The administration has said law doesn't allow us to do it. So I'm proposing a law that gives them the power to do what they have said they'd like to do, transparency. Will we instead object to this law to protect perpetrators of crimes against girls? That's the question tonight. Will we protect our children? Or will the information be withheld? Will we fail to demand it, fail to adopt this law to ensure that it's delivered in order to protect the powerful? That's the choice. Protect the victims, be on their side, pursue justice, or protect the powerful. So, Mr. President, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of Senate Bill 2557, which is at the desk. I further ask that the bill be considered read 3 times and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Objection.
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, for years Democrats have ignored this issue. Now they can't stop talking about it. Maybe it's because Democrats are trying to distract from their extreme, unprecedented obstruction here in the United States Senate. As of this morning, there were 147 qualified nominees awaiting confirmation by the United States Senate. Many were approved by committee with Democrat support. These aren't controversial nominees or individuals. They're patriotic Americans patiently awaiting for their opportunity to serve their country. Some have quit their jobs. Others have sold their assets. But this Democrat-Trump derangement syndrome is holding them back. So far this year, Democrats have allowed exactly zero nominees to be confirmed by voice vote. This is a drastic departure from the norms and traditions of the United States Senate. It's very different from how Republicans treated Democrat nominees when we were in the minority in 2021. Or maybe, Mr. President, it's because Democrats don't want to talk about their dreadful poll numbers, the lowest in 35 years. It is front-page news. Senate Republicans included a provision that addresses this very issue in the appropriations bill that Democrats are currently holding up. They're stopping the progress on the bill that addresses this. Either way you cut it, Mr. President, this exercise is a Democrat distraction, and therefore, Mr. President, I object.
Objection heard. The
Mr.
Senator
President.
from Oregon has the floor.
Mr. President, I ask my colleague to yield to a question. He has chosen not to, and that is his right. But the question I would ask this: if the Speaker of the House is demanding transparency, if the Majority Leader of the Senate is demanding transparency, if the American people are demanding transparency, if my colleagues who have said time and time again, just months ago, there should be transparency, then why does my colleague come here and object to transparency? What is that they know that they don't want the American people to know? To withhold this information is an assault on justice, and it is absolutely wrong, and we must continue to demand that the rich and powerful are not shielded from the full force of justice if they have perpetrated crimes against underage children. Thank you, Mr. President.